And circling back to our top story, Russian President Vladimir Putin on a two-day state visit to India. He was welcomed by Prime Minister Narendra Modi with a handshake and a hug. Mr. Putin has pushed back against U.S. pressure on India's purchases of Russian oil.
Well, the two leaders will meet later today for the 23rd India-Russia summit, and they're looking to deepen long-standing bilateral and work also towards raising two-way trade to $100 billion by the end of the decade.
And so for more on this summit, we're joined by Bharath Gopalaswamy, Executive Director at the District Global Solutions. He joins us from Chicago. Dr. Gopalaswamy, thanks very much, first of all. So I'm wondering, what is each leader looking for? I mean, Putin, I hear, wants to show the world he still has influential friends and perhaps, persuade India to resume buying Russian oil at full throttles. What is in it for Modi in particular, though?
Well, what is in it for Modi is India's critical hardware, military, especially the military hardware, is very Russian dependent. In particular, the S-400 systems performed very well during the recent India-Pakistan war. So India's defense hardware is particularly dependent on Russia, and the supply chain, so on, is dependent on Russia. Russia, for all practical purposes, for India is the former Soviet Union, and they've had a long-standing, reliable relationship. So India is playing a very delicate tightrope. At one point, they do want to maintain this particular relationship to ensure their military continuity. But at the same time, the Russians want to show that they're welcome in other parts of the world while they're being pushed out of Europe. The strategic part of it also, India does not want Russia to get too close to China. So there is that strategic element playing for India as well.
We also know that India has moderated its purchases of Russian oil, arguing, but it has argued, if you like, that it will behave in its self-interest. But the fact remains, we know that some of the major oil companies have stopped their purchases for the time being, perhaps. But, I'm wondering, how long will Modi, keep doing this? Because we're also hearing that this is all about a peace deal. And the minute Trump gets that peace deal in Ukraine, Modi can do whatever he wants.
That is right, but at the same time, some of your answer lies in the recent economic news front on India. The rupee slipped to an all-time low against the dollar in the last day or two, to 90 rupees to a dollar. So India is in a particularly vulnerable spot because the tariffs is at an all-time high against Indian goods. So it's actually in India's interest that this war ends, because that opens up a wide gamut of options. This war actually put India in a very awkward spot because it could play its strategic ambiguity card. It was closing to the West. This war created that wedge between West and India. So ironically, the ending of the war might play into India's favor. On another front, if you also think about it, Putin has always wanted India to take the Russian side. And in the last engagement that the Indians had with Russians, Prime Minister Modi said that he did not like children dying because of the war. So the Indians are also playing a very tight rope on it. The ending of the war might ironically result in India's favor.
Now, still on the war, Dr. Gopalaswamy, what's your feel on whether a high visibility meeting like this one between Modi and Putin could have any material influence on the war indeed, the Ukraine war, that is? What could India leverage in this relationship to play a role in de-escalation?
India has adopted a very consistent posture in this by saying that, diplomacy and dialogue are the main ways to resolve any conflict. I doubt India has any real leverage, nor would want to wield its leverage in ending this war. I don't think there is any political leverage. I think India would want to keep the Russians as close as possible, as well as the West as close as possible. The West is very much important for its economic growth. The Russians are very important for its military hardware, at least as of now. And I doubt, there is any political leverage that India will really have to end this war. It actually puts India in a very awkward spot, this war, because they're close to the Ukrainians, they're close to the Europeans, they were getting close to the Americans, and they're close to the Russians too. So
Okay, so that's interesting. Let's talk a little bit more about this delicate dance you've been referring to. We've covered oil, we've covered arms as well. What else will Washington be watching very closely and perhaps may not be happy about?
Washington's effects, Washington's pressure and effects have already had an effect on India. Like you mentioned previously, the Washington was not very happy with Indians buying a lot of oil from Russia. They've reduced that. On the arms side of things, Washington's always wanted to sell India more arms, but the platform sales take time. Platform sales are strategic sales. However, that has been recently jeopardized because of these tariffs and a little bit of the recent coldness in the Washington-India relationship. So Washington will be watching all these kinds of signals about how India, maintains its delicate dance. India, particularly from an Indian side, yes, you mentioned about India-Russia trade, but there has also been a trade imbalance between largely towards India. India would want the Russians to open up their markets to their goods. India would be looking for different kind of markets for their economy to grow. So that one, like such as shrimps and seafood and there are places where Indian economy can grow in the Russian market. So there is that aspect that can be played around. So these are things that Washington will be watching closely. But I'm sure on the strategic side, Washington really does know that India does not have a lot of friends when it comes to this kind of a delicate dance, at least as of now.
Okay, let's talk about discussions to come, Doctor. The India-Russia mobility agreement that's to be discussed in these 2 days. It promises new employment opportunities for Indian workers, but there are critics who say there's going to be problems with safety, perhaps reputation, other uncertainties. Does this pact offer genuine economic gain for India, or are they going to be sending their workers into a risky situation?
I very much doubt. It depends on what kind of workers are you talking about. If it's a very blue collar, those kinds of workers, maybe there is an opportunity for Russia that desperately faces some of these labor shortages. Yes. But still the high-tech mobility and the high-skilled workers, as far as the Indians are concerned, then don't forget there is a linguistic issue for the last 30 years. I'm not sure there were many other institutions offering linguistic courses that would train people to be geared towards moving to Russia and employment and there so on. So that is another challenge and crisis. Largely Indians for the last 30 years, ever since the end of the so-called the Soviet Union, India has been gearing more towards on the western side of the wall. So the Indian skill force, the linguistic skills have all been geared majorly towards the West, not necessarily towards Russia and so forth. So it's easy to say there is a mobility agreement, you can make all those things, but the practicality and the logistics of making something happen in a short term or in the short to medium term, I find that a little challenging to speak.
Right. Dr. Gopalaswamy, some have also argued that this labor agreement, labor pact, whatever you want to call it, is really more about Moscow's need for workers to keep its war economy going. Any merit in that argument at all?
There have been reports in the past and there have been proven evidences. So I'm sure there is some merit to this argument, so.
All right. Thank you so much for your thoughts. Bharath Gopalaswamy, Executive Director of District Global Solutions, speaking with us from Chicago. Thank you.